Attendees are still on hold, so I'm going to start the broadcast in about 30 seconds, guys. Here we go. Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Adoddle Information Delivery Plan webinar. My name is Tracy Saunders, and I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager for Asite. Today, we're pleased to bring you a presentation of our new feature, the Information Delivery Plan app. This new feature, introduced as part of the Adoddle platform, is driving a more proactive approach to delivery management. The methodology of managing handover information at any given stage through Excel sheets has now been superseded by this technology. The innovation is being rolled out across the Environmental Agency project here in the UK and on new builds with the University of Cambridge, also here in the UK, as well as a host of upcoming projects with both new and existing clients. With me here today to present these items in the live environment are Rob Clifton, our digital engineering manager, and Annie Lee, who's our marketing executive based out in the New York office. We'll be handling questions and answers at the end of the presentation, but feel free to type any questions that you may have into the questions tab on your screen whilst the speakers are live, so that we can get to everyone's questions during the Q&A session. Without further ado, I'll hand you over to Rob for the presentation.
Thank you for that, Tracy. So good afternoon, everyone. As Tracy mentioned, my name is Rob Clifton. I'm Digital Engineering Manager at Asite, running through the Information Delivery Plan with you today. So first off, why are we showing you this? Why are we showing you this tool? Essentially, information management, if it's inefficient, it results in delays. We're looking to support you with compliance, and fundamentally, we are looking to save you time on your projects through design and construction. So why does information delivery need to get better? Well, let's look at kind of a scenario that we have in place currently. This is fairly typical that we see information delivery plans held in Excel spreadsheets by each consultant, perhaps looking at the information they have to deliver across that project. So it's a fairly manual kind of way of managing that information, and potentially you will then have them pulled into a centralized spreadsheet, perhaps, that represents a master plan across all these different consultants. And you can see kind of that with these couple of diagrams in there. So that's what we have in place largely at the moment. If at all, of course, we come across clients who don't have this kind of level of information even at that stage. Now, traditionally, we've kind of worked in the construction industry where we've had a design team design, the entirety of a building, and then over a transitional period, that slowly kind of moved into construction. But as we move forward as an industry, and as we look to improve our offering to clients and ensure that buildings are becoming more active more quickly, that time is being squeezed, and the result of that is that information management, or that flow of information management, is even more critical. So in terms of the information management, how are we looking to support your compliance as well? Well, this is an extract I've taken from PAS 1192 Part 2 2013. It's kind of a key diagram in terms of the information flow across an entire project. And what you will note within here is there's specific reference to information delivery plans with different terminology, which I will come on to, but they are a real core part of information flow across any project that is looking for compliance towards this standard. So it's a really important aspect of that. in terms of actually the information flow on a project, let's consider kind of how this runs. So we maybe have an employer. We tend to use the word employer now opposed to clients, but an employer at the top level requesting kind of a project to be constructed. Beneath them, we may have a main supplier, or also, you know, consultants is a term again that tends to be used in there. And beneath consultants, we may have some specialists, what we maybe just term a supplier, but a specialist designing parts to feed in. And the flow of information tends to be from top to bottom. You've got your specialist designing parts to feed into a larger discipline design that then feeds up into the overall design that the employer is looking for. And that information can be everything, drawings, documents. There's a lot of content to that. And we've replicated that by just having singular people there, where in reality, what you're kind of expecting is that you've got a lot of low-level suppliers feeding an awful lot of information into main suppliers or main consultants that then feed equally large amounts of information up into the employer. And that results in kind of a really heavy information management setup there, with a lot of manual input required. And obviously, as we know, that the impact of manual intervention in something like this is that there's a significant time cost associated with that. There's a potential inherent risk of something going wrong through human error. And it's not efficient, essentially. We're looking to improve how that works. So how does an IDP help with this? What is an information delivery plan, and how does it kind of facilitate improved and more efficient working? So at the top level, you have this term, a master information delivery plan. It contains the entirety of the project plan. And beneath that, you will have, or contained within that, perhaps I should say, you have task information delivery plans. So these are your discipline-led plans for each task. So let's say I'm the architect taking that first oval there, and I have my plan broken down into all the architectural drawings or documentation that I need to produce. Again, you may have the same for each of your lead disciplines. That feed into that master information delivery plan at the center of any project. If we take it then a step lower, we've also got the suppliers who also have their own delivery schedules. So they will also, okay, potentially not as extensive in terms of the amount of information contained within them, but there should still be a plan of the information that needs to be delivered. That obviously feeds into the consultants that they in turn feed into, or potentially feeds directly up into the overall master information delivery plan that is central to the whole operation of the project's kind of information flow. So what's Asite solutions to this? So for those of you that don't know, Asite is a common data environment. We are a central place for information to be held on a project, particularly design information, also through then carrying through to construction. And if we think of, at the moment, kind of that Excel spreadsheet we talked about, we may have an Excel spreadsheet sat locally on a server that is manually filled in, and the information then appears within Asite. But the solution in terms of the delivery plan and how that is handled is to say, well, one of the big issues we have here at the moment is the fact that that delivery plan, that information in that Excel spreadsheet, has no correlation automatically to the area in which the information is being delivered. So instead, what Asite is simply introducing is a way to say, well, actually, let's put your information delivery plan within the environment you are delivering this information. And the benefit of that is that you can save your time, reduce your manual intervention and therefore your risk as a result of this kind of process flow. So that's a little introduction into how the information delivery plan fits within your information flows and within projects, and how it's going to help you with compliance. What we'll do now is move into the live platform and give you a demonstration of exactly how this operates. So within here, I have a specific project that I will be kind of running through today. And the most important point to understand before we kind of delve into this is the introduction of those roles that we mentioned previously. So we have an employer set up here. We've termed it here an employer project manager. We have a supplier and a supplier information manager. So that is tied directly to that information flow that we talked about previously. Now, if I move firstly into the information delivery plan, you will find it, for those that are familiar with Asite, within the project forms area of the system, once we have obviously configured it within your workspace. And I shall open one of these. The design is that you would have one of these per workspace. So let's fire this up, and then I will explain exactly how this essentially operates. So we've mentioned those three roles, the employer, the supplier information manager, and the supplier. Those are your tiers there. So the employer is the kind of lead party responsible for setting this up, for defining what stages do I have on my project, what deliverables have I got, and the information that is responsible, the contractual agreements at those stages. So if I go to a very high level here, this is kind of the first excuse me, introduction to how exactly this is going to work. So as we can see, we've got 5 stages set up here. This is something that is configurable. So set it up as you wish. If you are running just stage 3 and stage 4 on your project, then just select those 2 stages. Alternatively, you could add stage 6, 7, and 8 if you really wanted to. It's completely down to you how you wish to configure this setup here. In terms of the project information, that is firstly just pulled across from the roles. So if we look at the project managers here, for those that are really sharp-eyed, you'd have noted that the individuals placed in that employer project manager role within the administrator settings there also feed directly straight into the IDP management within this section. Within there also we have some other information such as project name, what facility it is, and as I say, you can build this up as you require. What I'm going to move into now is this is just a view of the IDP. I'm actually going to move into the active kind of live version of how this all operates and directly ties together, and you'll see it's going to become a little bit more alive when I start to do this. So the first thing is, down the left hand side, I have set up as an employer, and that is the role I've essentially placed myself in here, as to be able to define the high level packages that I'm looking for delivery on. Essentially my contractual agreements across the project. So you can see, at a high level I've got drawings, documents, models, and beneath maybe drawings I have some GA plans, or documents I've got some specifications. So my high level deliverables are set up there, and something you can configure within the system. Now this has been constructed with a specific focus, as I mentioned, on 1192, so there's some content there about capability, whether you require native format, and so on and so forth. So that's held in there, but it's not key to its operation. Moving across to the center of the screen, you will see here I've got the actual contractual deliverables. So this is me as an employer identifying who is responsible for delivering a specific package, or a specific piece of, a specific package is probably the best way to term it, at a given stage in the project. So for example, I'm at preparation and brief here, perhaps I'm putting my feasibility design together, and I'm defining, okay, these organizations, UNV, Universal Company, it's just something I've set up within the attributes here as responsible for delivering the whole drawing pack. I've also defined Asite to do just the general arrangement drawings, and so on and so forth. So that's how I've defined those high-level contractual agreements from one party, i.e. the employer, to the next tier down, your main consultants, within the information delivery plan. Now if I then break it up a little bit more, you're going to see a whole host of content then become live beneath that. So taking something there, we've got drawings as an example, or GA plans. Now I've agreed with, as I say, contractually with ASI here, this organization Asite, who's one of my appointed consultants, that they are responsible for delivering this pack of information. However, me, the employer, I don't necessarily know what information, what individual items, as we term them now, is going to form that overall package. That is up to the consultant to decide on that kind of content contained within there. And what that allows the consultant or supplier information manager to do is then go and add levels here and individual items to be delivered against. So I'm going to exactly run through how this operates now. So as I say, as the employer could do this, or the supplier information manager in this case. But first off, you will note, I'm just going to click into this to show the content that's shown here. So it's just very high level. What level of definition have I got here? So that's a combination of information and detail. So I've got a balance of that within there. Who is the kind of key supplier? You can see pre-selected. It's now locked because they are responsible and they are midway through the delivery of that. And the RAG status, something I will touch on slightly later on. So as I mentioned, what I'm going to do is going to add in a new kind of deliverable item here. So let's start off with the GA plans, and I can select and see the high level information that we have against this kind of content. In this case, I'm wishing to add an item. So an item is a term that we may previously have related to an actual deliverable. When we talked about a deliverable, traditionally we maybe meant a singular drawing or a singular document. That term has now been replaced with item, as deliverable represents the overall package of information that I'm responsible for delivering. So in this case, we're going to select and add an item here. Now, what you will see appears here is a folder structure on the left-hand side. So this is the first indication of the real value that you're getting from using Asite's information delivery plan tool, is the fact it's directly connected to the area in which the information is going to be delivered. So I have a selection of folders here which I can define. Perhaps I'm going to select in this case the client deliverables folder. But just to show how this is connected, if I just return to the main aspect of the system here and move into the files area, essentially the repository for all of the information within the platform, you can see exactly the same folder structure set up here. And this is what's particularly significant about this, is this connection, this automation between delivery plan and delivery of information. There's no manual intervention required here. So I'm in this client deliverables folder. This is where all the content is to be pushed once it's been delivered. So in this case, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to deliver in the same place. What floor are we up to? Let's say we get onto the 5th floor. Excuse me. I can select the volume. So you'll note that these are quite 1192 heavy naming convention terms here, but this is of course something that you can configure. So I'm just going to say perhaps area Z1 in this scenario. What location? In this case, obviously the 5th floor is what I'm delivering. What file type? Drawing, role. So essentially that's putting together my actual naming convention there in the background without you being particularly aware of that. I will again come back to how that operates. But the main point is I'm defining the information that I'm looking to deliver at this stage. And if I update that, you will see that line item appears under that deliverable there. Should probably have named it correctly. Okay, let's just update that. Okay, so we have the 5th floor item there now. Now, that is just creating the item itself. At this point, I've not defined who is delivering it at each given stage. So in this scenario, obviously, we are looking at potentially the preparation and brief. It may be that some of the concept design has already started. You can see some documents appearing here that represent that flow of information. But either way, we're going to deal with this 5th floor information here. So what I want to define now is, as the employer, again, I could be wearing the hat of the supplier information manager here, but I'm going to define who is actually responsible as an individual within the system for delivering this piece of information. So if I select the actual stage here, you will see it's automatically going to pick up excuse me, it's going to pick up a user within the system who will be assigned an action to deliver this specific 5th floor item that I'm defining as part of my overall plan. So I have a dummy count set up in the system here. So I'm just going to select that user. I can define a due date. So not only am I able to actually put the action in place, I can define a date by when it's due and a level of definition that I am looking for on this piece of information. I then update that within the system. That's going to push into my information delivery plan and also push directly into the system. So you will see there that that has now had a red bar against it. The ones with the red bar means there is an action existing within the system. So there's a specific task to deliver an item such as this within the platform. If I return back to my files area here and I click on my client deliverables just to give a refresh, you will note a file has appeared at the top there. So if we just kind of correlate that across, first off, you can see the document reference, a compliant BS 1192 7-part naming convention has been configured simply by a selection of drop-downs, something that's really, really important. This isn't just about information delivery, it's also about compliance to those standards that we mentioned. I can scroll across and view all the additional metadata, and most importantly, to that user, an action has been assigned. A bit Blue Peter, but obviously I've done these two earlier. So you can see for these two files, I'm responsible for delivering these. What I'm going to do is switch into that user now so you can see how it looks from a supplier perspective. So what I've set up in the system is a proxy access. So this allows me view into a different account in this scenario. And we now will run the scenario through from that side. Just update that. 2 seconds. Okay. So I'm just going to log back out. So I'm now, as I said, within this user now, I've now logged in from a supplier perspective. So lower down the supply chain, if you like, I'm just looking at the delivery of my information. You can see I've got 6 incomplete actions over on the left-hand side here. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cough at the moment, as I think you may have worked out. And if I click on these 6 incomplete actions, then I can see the different tasks I've got to do within the system. At top of that list now appeared has been that deliverable item that was placed directly into the information plan. So I can either kind of move into the documentation here, or alternatively I can also look at the information delivery plan, but from a slightly different perspective. So I can move into the plan here. I'm going to get much the same view, potentially slightly slightly trimmed down and slightly different access because of what organization I am party to. So you will note the hashing has come up on the Asite items because I'm not responsible for delivering those. I've not been defined as a user of that organization. I am a user of UNV, and so I'm only able to deliver information on the specific line items that relate to my information. So if I go into the editable version once again of this setup, what we can see here, as I say, is the breakdown of who is delivering each information, and you can see that one that I've added in within the system. So this is really, really important. So we're moving away from that Excel kind of concept and that manual requirement for somebody to look at the items that are going to be delivered first off and write them in a big spreadsheet. And then once they've been delivered, for someone to manually connect the dots between what exists in the place the information has been sent to and what has been marked as completed within that Excel spreadsheet. And then all of that has to be pulled together in a central place for potentially the employer to see. So this is all happening live. So it's a continually evolving plan. It allows all parties to kind of be involved with it, pushing in their own TIDPs, those task information delivery plans we talked about earlier on, into one central master information delivery plan that has view of everything. So in this scenario here, what we've got is I've been defined the task to deliver that 5th floor drawing, and I'm now, let's say, completed that task. I'm now going to deliver it straight onto the information delivery plan itself. So that connection, again, really, really important, that automation between the two kind of tools, if you like. So if I click on that specific task, you will note that this box appears here for me to drop the file onto. And much is the same as the rest of the Asite platform. Excuse me. I have the ability to drag and drop information onto here as well. So let's say I'm within my files area here. So this is just locally on my machine. I've been generating this document. So let's take this general arrangement plan here. I can rename this. Let's just say I'm going to throw this in as 5th floor. Okay, quite a critical point. This is not a compliant naming convention by any stretch. It is just a name I have given to a file, and you're going to see something really, really effective happen in a second. So I can drag and drop straight onto that information delivery item. So I've gone into the delivery plan. I've simply selected the item I'm going to be delivering. Again, we're looking at compliance here to 1192, so I can define what is this information being delivered for. Let's say at this stage, for review and comment. And what revision of this file? Okay, well, it's the first one going in. It's an S code P01. The attach file there will also allow you to put in that native piece of information as well. So if I'm delivering in PDF format, I can attach the DWG, let's say, or IFC and Revit model or Bentley or whatever you're using in that sense. From within here, I can click Update. And if the IDP is going to run all the way through for me, that piece of information is then going to appear directly within my files area of the platform. So that connection there, you can see that that box has now disappeared. We have a link appeared here against this specific file. And if I move into that area, and this is, as I say, the really, really fantastic part of this, if I move into the files area where that information was defined, that information has dropped in there with a fully compliant naming convention, and all I have done as a supplier is be assigned an action and deliver a file with a completely non-compliant naming convention. So without barely any involvement or any knowledge of 1192, I can be compliant in that sense. Without any manual requirements to keep a schedule up to date or anything like that, I'm able to directly connect my delivery plan and my files area And the benefit of this is because it's within the Asite platform, it's then dropped straight into the rest of the functionality that exists within the system. So, delving a little bit into 1192 without going too far, this file has gone into the workflow for sharing. That means it's in that #1 approval gateway. That means first off it's been made private, meaning no other user is able to see that until it is fully reached the shared area. And if I scroll across here, you will see a workflow status of running and a workflow stage of being checked. Now, conveniently, the supplier is also the person who is checking their own information. They're a specialist in this scenario, so they are approving that information into the shared area. And that status change task has been assigned, excuse me, has been assigned there. So it's not just about delivering the information, it's also that because it's connected to a system that has all of the functionality built on top, I can view that piece of information, I can now workflow it as is required. And the workflow is a little more complex than just saying, okay, well, the item's been delivered, okay, job done. For those that are really familiar with 1192, and you don't need to be to use this, I should say you could just use it for your own statuses as you wish. Let's say ABC is approved, for example. But in this scenario, anything that is shared is non-contractual. It's not considered as delivered if it's shared. So if I move this document here towards shared, as I say, I'm just doing the approval myself. Approved as shared. That workflow is going to kick forwards. And again, you're going to see something really, really effective kind of develop here. So the workflow has now kind of moved forwards there. The status has been shared. If I scroll across, I can actually click on this workflow to have a visual representation of where it has moved through to. And we can see that because, yes, it's been shared, but it's not been delivered, it's not reached that published status, which is that contractual agreement of, yes, this file has been approved, create a placeholder for the item once again, because we need it to be delivered at that published state. So it's not just about managing the information, delivering it the first time, it's also about making sure that it reaches the contractual status that you have agreed as part of your contract with the employer or with the supplier. So if I actually click on this client deliverables folder here, again, you're going to see the previous version of the file behind it, but I've still got that publishing action there to reach that final published contractually agreed state. And I can go through the same cycle to reach that that final stage. Again, just deliver the information, but I'm not going to spend your time kind of going through that, so maybe I'll just explain a little bit about how and the importance of how that's then tied into the system. So from this side and from the supplier perspective, we've kind of handled that. Now, as I say, if you've got any questions, please just type them in. I will be picking them up shortly, kind of when we come to the end of the presentation here. So let's return back to the employer in this stage. Okay, so we're now back into the dashboard area here of the employer. You can see some incomplete actions. That's going to be driven from that file being pushed into the system. And within the project forms, I can launch back into my IDP, this time just refreshing it with a little bit more content within here. Okay, so we can see now that universal organization has delivered that file. There is a link there. So the first thing that's worth mentioning with these files is once you've completed your project, this still has a huge amount of value for it. So for example, if you want to see all of the information that was formed as part of a handover, perhaps you've lost a paper piece of documentation, because it's all held within here and these links are live, I can directly click from here straight to the viewing area of that specific file. So there's no need for me to kind of find it within the system or move through. I'm directly connected into the delivery area of that file, and I can view that information accordingly. So I'm directly connected, not just to the delivery area, but also to the files themselves. Now that has a significant value with the delivered file, so I'm just going to touch it on here, kind of this red, sorry, well you only have amber and green in here, you also have red as a third color in here as well, and how does that actually tie in? So the first file I placed into the system, I put that in as a shared status, so it was not a agreed contractually complete piece of information. What we need to do that is to have a published status, so we can see within the files area here, those that have reached that stage, and as I say, again, a bit blue petery, but we have one file here, 01_3, that is reached the full publishing stage. So it's waiting for that final authorization to reach the green color code. So you can see that here highlighted by a yellow icon. So if I go into the excuse me, the editable version of this, we have that file there. There's no red action on it because there's nothing to deliver that file against. There's no requirement to deliver a new file in there. All it simply needs to be done is authorized to reach that final published state. So in this case, I'm going to change the status again. Now I have a higher level of permission. These are, again, BIM level 2 terminology and 1192. It doesn't have to be. It is just an example that I'm running through because it is very, very helpful for those that are looking to be compliant towards 1192. So I'm going to say authorized in this scenario and change the status of that piece of information there. So it's now going to get that green code. It represents the fact that that piece has been completed contractually. And if I now verify this, you will note that that icon there has gone from yellow to green. So it represents the fact that that piece of information has successfully reached that contractual status. Now, obviously, I've only got maybe, I don't know, 10, 12 files within here, but I would expect on any reasonable kind of size project, you're talking hundreds up to thousands, even tens of thousands of pieces of information. And being able to track what's been delivered automatically and also to the fact that it's reached the correct status is incredibly valuable. Now, what we can also do is, that's looking at a very kind of specific level, quite detailed, what we term the master information delivery plan, because it contains all of that information. If I roll that up to a high level and go back to where we began, I have my contractual deliverables here with all my consultants. So I'm the employer, I'm looking at contractually where are we with all of the deliverables we define, and I can see the documentations have all been completed. Green, I've got that green line. But the GA plans, they're still outstanding. There's still work to be done there. And at that point, I can drill down into the master information delivery plan, showing me all of that content, which, excuse me, which, as mentioned on the slides previously, is made up of all those individual task information delivery plans that I can view also within here by selecting a specific consultant that's going to trim down information that they are not that they are responsible for. So it's all tracked within here where those deliverables come into play. So that is a real strength of the platform, to be able to not just create the placeholders, deliver the information, but also then highlight those files at any kind of varying depth in terms of you know, from project level down to actual individual tasks, and with regards to what has been completed in its entirety. Now, the final point I'm going to touch on before I take any questions, I'm very sorry about my cough at the moment, but is the plain language questions. So something that is related to the information delivery plan is about saying to an employer or a client who is not necessarily experienced within construction, answers to questions that are essentially straightforward. So, you know, what is my concrete area going to be on site, for example? Basic questions that are contained within deliverables one way or another. So what we have within here is, if I click on one of these, I can see kind of a straightforward plain language questions here to show the ground floor layout. Okay, it's a straightforward question. Maybe I don't know the 1192 naming convention. I just want to find out the answer to that question. Now, what we can do within the Asite IDP is connect those plain language questions to the deliverables they relate to. So in this scenario, I have the plain language questions here. I'm going to edit this and say, well, okay, the answer to this question placed by the employer is it will be in the GA plans, and you will see instantly there the documents and data, so all of those pieces of information delivered beneath that contractual agreement there all come into play. I can save that, so any member of the employer's team can now come into the platform without any knowledge of, you know, the files area, that structure, of the actual naming convention. To be honest, barely any knowledge of the project at all. Place a question there that can be responded by a supplier information manager or a supplier further down the chain. It's very, very easy to use at whatever level you are looking to use it for. So that kind of brings to end the live demo of the platform. There are some other features there worth mentioning, and perhaps we'll pick up on some of those in the questioning. The one maybe worth mentioning just before then is the fact that you can export this as a COBie as well, so you have your information exchange formats for all of these deliverables as well. For now, though, I'm going to hand over to, I believe, Annie or Tracy, as that brings to the end that live demo.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rob. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Rob. This is Annie Lee speaking. And thank you for that information. The IDP seems like a very seamless approach to information management. So now if anybody has some questions, it's time for the Q&A, and Tracy is going to be answering some of the first few questions, Tracy and Rob. So over to you, Tracy.
Thanks, Annie. Rob, the first question that's come in, as a specialist supplier, how would this work for me?
Okay, so for a specialist, I mean, the view I've kind of shown off there is obviously of the whole IDP itself. Let me just trim this down here. Of the whole kind of from an employer level. But if we go back potentially to that slide previously, you've seen here, let me just put this up live here. So you see here, obviously, you've got the task information delivery plans, even at a lower level, feed into that master information delivery plan. So whatever level you are within a supply chain, the ability to have a plan connected to where you are delivering the information is still very, very important. If you don't have that, you have those manual issues that I kind of raised previously, where if you aren't doing it through an automated system such as this, you are manually doing it, and if you're manually doing it, then that results in the risk and the delays or potential delays that we discussed earlier on. So I think whatever level you are in the supply chain, this tool's got a real ability to help you move forwards, essentially, especially if you're looking towards BIM level 2 and compliance on that basis as well.
Thanks for that, Rob. The next question that's come in is, rather than having package numbers with underscored unique identifiers, can the IDP manage using a work breakdown structure-based package, numbering and using a BS 1192 numbering convention for the elements?
Okay. So within the system here, obviously, I've just set up drawings, documents, models as my kind of tiers there, and the numbering accordingly underneath that. So that is just how I've configured the setup here, and I've pulled it in from an import file that is used to set up this, which I will open for you now, just so you can see how this information is actually driven into the system. So you can see these are my high-level deliverables here. Now, you could set up that piece of documentation or that import however you like. You can set up your work breakdown structure within there, then pull that straight into the system, and then the output of that is, of course, that you have your setup completely to your own configuration. And that goes for the stages as well. So I can completely edit the name, the order of these stages based on what my requirements are. So yes, your work breakdown structure can certainly be pulled in there, and your numbering done accordingly. That is simply how this one is just set up.
Thanks for that one, Rob. The next question is can all user roles view the whole IDP?
Okay, so depending on where you are in the supply chain, no, it's slightly different essentially. So if you have an area that you are responsible for, i.e. a contractual agreement, then of course you can see everything down. So for example, me in here as Asite, I can see these contractual agreements and everything down. Apologies, I'm actually in as the employer, which is why I can see everything. But I can see these contractual agreements here, and then all the items that relate underneath that. If you are lower level down the supply chain, then you will have certain access, but not the extensive access that the employer does, particularly related to comments. I didn't delve too much into comments, but you are only able to see comments from your own organization. You won't be able to see comments on the IDP from different organizations. But with the information deliverables, for the most part, yes, because of course they may have an impact on the information you are delivering as well.
Another question, do the file status changes appear in the discussions area or in the file history?
Yeah, I mean the straight answer to that is both. They are both part of the discussion to say this file has moved from for sharing to shared, so that's relevant within there, but they're also within the history as well, as is viewing all of the file content. So for example, this file here, if I go into the history of information, you can see the history of status changes there, and if I went into discussions, you would also see the same kind of information held there as well.
Awesome. And then one last question. How does one go about configuring deliverables?
Okay. So that then kind of ties back to the the Excel spreadsheet I mentioned previously. So it's all related to this basically. However you want your deliverables set up, you define it within this piece of documentation here. We then are able to import that into the system. The main thing is the configuration is done on our side. So we are able to set this up for you so you can essentially come into the project and just start using it. That's the most important point here. We wouldn't expect you to go into the details of the configuration behind it. We just expect you to come in, or you will find the value when you come in and just use the IDP as it's designed to be used to help you plan out your deliverable schedule and your deliverable information.
Awesome. We've got one last question that's come in that we've got time to answer. So how do we go about getting this set up? The best way to go about this is just get in contact with your Asite consultant, your account manager, or just pop us an email at support@asite.com, and we'll have one of the consultants contact you with more details about getting the IDP set up for your organization. I am going to pass over to Annie now to do the close for us.
Okay, everyone. Any questions that we have not had the time to answer today, you can email. We can email the answers to you. Just email us at support@asite.com. Thank you for your time and interest, and be sure to tune in for our next webinar, which will be taking place in approximately 6 weeks. And we'll update you on all the newly released functionality that will be delivered to Adoddle. And if you have any suggestions, questions for our platform, feel free to email us, again, at support@asite.com. Thank you, everyone, and until next time.
Thanks all. Bye.